What's good, YouTube? It's your boy DJ LiftOFF with the JP way, and you don't want to miss this flight. Today I'm going to be giving you all 5 things that I wish I knew before I learned how to scratch. And without further ado, we just gonna hop right into it. The very first thing on this list is moving platters. Now, I did actually try to learn how to scratch using a Numark Mixtrack Pro 2, which is a Numark DJ controller, but personally, I just think it's much easier to learn on moving platters. 2 main reasons. Number 1, the platter is just much bigger. It gives your hand more space to go back and forward on the platter, just a lot more comfortable in general. Number 2, when your platter is actually moving, it gives you the ability to actually let your platter go and then pull it back. So letting it go and pulling it back is a very common thing that scratch DJs do. And once you've actually done it enough, you can replicate it with the DJ controller. But when you're first learning, it's much easier to kind of get the feel of it with a moving platter opposed to a DJ controller. Now, I do know that DJ controllers are typically less expensive than turntables. So if you can't actually get a turntable or something like a Rain 12, then work with what you can. But if you are able to get something with a moving platter, even like a Numark, a Numark NS7 II or a Numark NS7 III, even though they have smaller jog wheels or smaller platters, even something like that, anything with a moving platter will definitely be beneficial and recommended. Now let's go ahead and move on to number 2, learning the fundamental scratches. And when I say that, I mean like the forward scratch, the baby scratch, the chirp scratch, just doing simple drops. There are so many benefits to learning the fundamentals and going over the fundamentals until you have them perfect. One analogy that I do like to make is if you play sports, whether that's baseball, basketball, football, you wouldn't just go on the field or go on the court and just start doing moves. You wouldn't just start going through the legs, doing spin moves, get to the rack and lay it up. So scratching is no different than anything else. Learning the fundamentals is extremely important. And then once you understand the fundamentals, then you can start moving on to putting the fundamentals together to do more advanced scratching. Now that takes me right into number 3, which I like to say in a lot of my videos. If you've seen some of my other videos, I say this all the time: understanding the scratches in your head. It's extremely easy to just move your hand back and forth on the platter and just like mess with the crossfader and it'll sound like you're scratching. So I've seen some DJs kind of just doing that. You can just kind of tell that they're just moving their hand, moving the crossfader, and although it sounds like you're scratching, it forms really bad habits because you actually think that you're scratching. And even though sometimes it does sound good, like you might catch a nice little vibe or you might catch a couple nice cuts, you're not really understanding what you're doing. So then when it's time to go back and actually learn the fundamentals, you're kind of like already formed those bad habits of using the crossfader incorrectly, most likely. I like to say in my head what I'm actually doing. So I can literally do a whole scratch pattern in my head before I actually transfer it to doing it with my hands. And the benefit of that is simply understanding what you're doing. So back to the sports analogy, after you've done a crossover enough times, it eventually becomes second nature. So when you're in the game, you just do your crossover, get to the rack or get to the 3-point line, you shoot the ball. Same exact thing with scratching. Once you've done the fundamentals and repeated it and practiced it enough, you'll literally just do the scratches naturally. Now let's move on to number 4, practice, and it takes time. One thing I really wish I understood when I first started learning how to scratch is how much time it actually takes. Like the baby scratch, the chirp scratch, do not move forward past those simple scratches until you have it perfected. When I was first learning how to scratch, I would see pro DJs scratching, and although it didn't look easy, it looked like something that I could pick up within maybe a couple months and I would be able to do it. But the reality of the situation is it's going to take a lot of repetition and a lot of practice. And I say that to say, never feel discouraged. If you're not getting it right away, I don't think anyone really gets it right away. It takes a lot of time. So if you see a DJ that's just killing it, or you see someone else that gets it pretty quickly, I think that's like literally 1 in 100 people that can just pick up scratching super easily. It's not easy, it takes a lot of practice. So just remember that whenever you feel discouraged or whenever you feel like you can't do a scratch or a scratch pattern, just practice it every single day, and before you know it, I promise you, before you know it, you'll start understanding how to do it. All right, now let's move on to number 5, which is the last thing. Once you go through 1, 2, 3, and 4, I mean, you've practiced everything, you've repeated it, you understand the fundamentals. Find some pro DJs that have some really good scratch patterns, or you can actually look at some of my videos where I've broken down different scratch patterns. slow down the video. Within YouTube, they do have a playback speed. You can slow it down to 0.5, 0.25, whatever's most comfortable for you. No matter how long it takes you, no matter how slow you have to go, learning from the pro DJs is what helped me just tremendously. In the beginning, I tried to just kind of be creative and create scratch patterns on my own and do certain things. And I also do recommend doing that as well, creating your own scratch patterns. But in the very beginning, seeing what the other pro DJs are doing and what they've done really helps you get that fundamental understanding of what different scratch patterns, like longer 4 or 8 bar scratch patterns, sound like. And then once you understand some of those, once you've done a few pro DJ scratches, then you can start making up your own using everything that you've learned. So with that said, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, I'm up out of here. Catch y'all in the next video.